Tonight, we're going to drift into a quieter world, a world where every part of daily life was shaped, guided, and sometimes completely controlled by rules that seem strange to us now, but made perfect sense to the people who lived beneath them. Rules about clothing, rules about food, rules about fire, work, bathing, and even how you were allowed to speak. Not laws written in dusty books, but expectations woven into the rhythm of medieval life. And as we explore them slowly, one gentle idea at a time, you may start to see how ordinary people lived under a structure that felt protective, restrictive, comforting, and sometimes quietly suffocating all at once. Before we sink into the first rule, if you enjoy these slow journeys into the quieter corners of the past, you can like the video and subscribe, but only if it feels natural and not rushed. And if you want, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. I always find it calming to see how far and wide people connect from, all settling into the same quiet moment together. One of the most quietly powerful rules of medieval life was that you were expected to dress according to who you were, not who you wanted to be, and certainly not who you hoped others might mistake you for. Just who you were, your rank, your station, your place in the world. And while this may sound controlling or even a little theatrical, there was a deeper psychological logic underneath it. Sumptuary laws, the rules that dictated who could wear what, were designed to keep society legible. In a world with no identification cards, no paperwork, and very little literacy, clothing became the visual language of status. If someone wore fur, silk, velvet, or a particular color, you were supposed to be able to understand instantly what level of power they carried and what kind of obligations you owed them. A noble's bright fabric wasn't fashion, it was communication. And for most people, that also meant the opposite. You weren't supposed to dress above your station. It wasn't just about vanity. The medieval world ran on hierarchy, and hierarchy worked best when everyone could see it at a glance. So wool stayed with those who worked the land, simple colors stayed with simple folk, and the richer fabrics lived in the castles and manor halls. For the people who lived beneath these rules, this wasn't seen as oppression. It was normal, predictable, a kind of stability. You didn't wake up each morning wondering what image to project. Your clothes were chosen for you by the place you occupied in the world, and whether that brought comfort or frustration depended entirely on where you stood within that structure. If clothing told people who they were, another rule shaped when they lived, because in the medieval world, time wasn't something you personally measured. It wasn't kept on your wrist, or on a phone, or even on a wall. Time lived in a tower, and it spoke through bells. The bell tower was the heart of timekeeping. It rang to wake you. It rang to tell you when to work. It rang for prayer, for meals, for vespers, and for the moment when fires were meant to be covered for the night. You didn't choose your schedule. The community chose it for you, or rather, the bell did. Every person in the village lived inside the same steady rhythm, a kind of shared heartbeat pulsing through the air. To us, this may feel limiting. To them, it was structure, predictable, reassuring, almost protective. In a world without clocks, bells were the closest thing to order. What seems strange to us today is that the bell wasn't just about time, it was about stability and safety. The bell ensured that people prayed at the same hour, work began and ended together, streets stayed empty after dark fires were put out. Before they spread, gatherings didn't become disorderly, the community didn't drift into chaos. In a world with fragile buildings, limited light, and frequent dangers, a single shared timetable kept life manageable. The bell wasn't a suggestion, it was law, softly enforced, but always present. For most villagers, the bell felt like a familiar companion, sometimes comforting, sometimes intrusive. It dictated when the fields could be ploughed, when the loom must stop, when the market opened, when the fires had to be covered, when the night truly began. And because everyone lived under the same rhythm, there was little room for personal timing. It wasn't, "I'll work until I'm done." It was, "I'll work until the bell says we stop." For some, This brought relief, a sense of order in a world that often felt unpredictable. For others, especially those with long tasks or tight harvest schedules, the bell could feel like an invisible hand pressing gently against their day. Yet the bell ruled quietly, not with force, but with expectation, a reminder that life here followed a shared pace. And just as the bell shaped when people lived, another rule shaped what they were allowed to eat, both for spiritual reasons and for the simple reality that survival demanded discipline. If clothing told you who you were, and the village bell told you when you lived, then food quietly reminded you how much discipline your world depended on. Because in the medieval mind, eating was not simply nourishment, it was spirituality, economics, and community stability blended into one gentle but unbreakable expectation, and the rules around food were among the most quietly strict of all. In the Middle Ages, you didn't choose your meals purely by appetite, you were guided by the church calendar, a rhythm of feast days and fasting days that shaped nearly half the year. Fridays, Lent, Advent, Saints' days, even seasonal cycles that signaled scarcity. On these days, meat often disappeared from the table, not because someone wanted to scold you, but because the community needed a method to stretch its resources through seasons of hunger. The idea seems strict, but it came from a place of quiet practicality.